Hi, this is Al, and welcome to Open Chats. The Open Chats, this is season 0, and what we want to do is to speak to eminent personalities in tech, in data, and in development. And we want to learn from them. What does future look like for Africa and for all of us? Today, I have Nivi. Nivi is a great friend, and she recently joined the board of the Open Institute. And as I told you last time, this entire season, we're going to be talking just to the board members of the Open Institute as we try to reflect on why they joined, who they are, and what they're about. As we do that, of course, we're going to meander and talk about many other things. And we hope you're going to enjoy it. Now, as I start, I have to tell you, subscribe. It's right over there. Little bell on the right so that you can catch all the other episodes as we come. Now, Nivi, hi.
Hi.
Welcome to Open Chats.
And welcome to the board. What an incredible board. Thank you.
Exactly. So why did you join the board?
I was so hesitant because there's so much pressure on time and so on. So those are the reasons I didn't join the board or didn't want to join the board.
Yeah.
But I came and I spent a day with you in Kilifi with your family.
Yeah.
You cooked me a beautiful meal.
Yes. I have to do that so that that is how I got all the board members. Cook them a beautiful meal.
And that's why. No, I'm joking. But I've always heard about open data, the Open Data Initiative, World Bank doing things, our ex-president Kibaki doing things for open data. Great. All of these top-down initiatives. And being there in Kilifi, seeing the work you do on the grassroots level, thinking about, it's very good to create systems to listen carefully for a government to do that.
Yes.
But also important is to make sure that voices from the very bottom,
yes.
The people who are never heard, the people who are always forgotten, people who don't even have an ID,
right.
let alone a voice
yes.
In our democratic system.
Yes.
Those people, to pick their voices up, give them a voice, show them how to be heard, show them how to speak up. And that nexus between bottom-up getting voices heard and top-down systems of listening,
yes.
that Open Institute is there. I don't know. I think that was really what got me. That was the magic that I was like, okay, this is different. Yeah.
Excellent. So Nivi is the CEO of Bridges to Prosperity. Would you tell us a little bit about, Bridges to Prosperity and what it is that you do?
I'm the CEO, which means I cannot tell you what I do because I feel that's different every day.
You do the accounts.
But Bridges to Prosperity is this beautiful NGO. It started over 20 years ago by a man who saw a National Geographic cover
yes.
of some people, using a rope to cross a river in
right.
Ethiopia. And he was, had made some money from a big development project in Virginia, I think, and said, I can go and build a bridge there. And he did. And, from that thought of thinking, when something is so important to get to the other side of the bridge, that
yes.
you're willing to do that with your life, with your children's life,
right.
To get there,
yes.
there must, one, be something very important on the other side.
Right.
And two, no other way for you to get there.
Yes.
That makes sense. And so, Bridges to Prosperity is really founded on that principle of rural isolation is a root cause of poverty. And we often think about poverty as, in so many different ways, but we don't realize that some people just can't get to a market, the garment factory where they might get a job, to the school where their kids go, to healthcare facilities, to get an attended birth. All of these things that we take for granted.
They're just too far away from.
Yeah, they're just, and there's a very simple, governments build bridges all over the place, but this NGO is really focused on a specific type of low cost, very sustainable, long life, very sturdy cable bridge, and we call it a trail bridge. That's for pedestrians, bicycles, and motorbikes.
But you've got years of experience working in tech. I've known Nivi all the time as a person who works in tech. So now you're a person who works in infrastructure. What's that like? What's that transition like for you?
To rural infrastructure. First, it's still access. So my career has always been dedicated to access to educational opportunities, access to connectivity, access to the largest, greatest network of knowledge and information in the world, that is the internet. But B2P is still tech driven. That, we built bridges all over the world, 500 bridges all over the world. And it's not sustainable for a little NGO to be, to work out of Rwanda and Uganda and Ethiopia and build all the bridges that are needed for these 250 million people who are living in rural isolation.
Yes.
So we really are thinking about, like, how do we leverage technology to, one, use satellite imagery to see where the need is for these bridges, to use our data, our keen eye on evidence and impact data to see, like, what is the impact of any bridge that we use, and then how do we use technology to really get the message out there, to advocate for this and get other governments to take it on, take the program on and build more bridges for their rural citizens.
But now, you see, when you're doing tech, it's a very venture capital driven, very new age driven, and so on and so forth. When you're working with bridges, you're almost going what we have called low tech. You're thinking about, bricks and mortar kind of things. And you're also thinking about a very different audience. At the iHub, when I knew you were doing stuff that was very ahead of the curve. Now you've come back down to earth, I would say, and you're dealing with stuff that is very hands-on. And the question that I would ask is this: when you think about the continent, when you think about the African continent, we're so diverse. There's in 100 square kilometers, you will find very isolated people in one place and very urbane people. How do you merge these realities? And how do you merge the reality that you've had to live both realities?
Right.
How do you merge these two realities and how do you work them?
I told you, my ancestors came to East Africa to build a railway, right? That connected East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, and so on. But it's to think now that I'm building bridges is quite poetic in my mind. And we know that infrastructure works. Like, we know that wherever you put infrastructure, there will be development. Now, we know that the sexy urban infrastructure is much more monetizable. Toll roads, energy transmission, that's what people want to do because it makes money. But, to leverage small, like you say, on the ground infrastructure, a simple bridge, to say that, well, how do we measure the return on investment here? And, keep in mind that we're not building bridges in a place where the community is the biggest, so we have, the impact on the most people. We're building bridges for the most marginalized people. So in nature, there are few in number. And then how do we really studiously, honestly, transparently look at that data and say, is this worth it? What are we getting? What's happening to farmer inputs? What's happening to income levels? What's happening to enrollment of girls especially? Because the mothers are like, oh, I don't think you should go to school today. The river's kind of choppy. It looks like it's going to rain. No mother should have to make that decision in the morning, And
sometimes let the boys go, but let the girls stay.
But often it's, the girls that get held back. Often it's the women who are trying to carry their produce to the market that are less able to do so. So, on all of these levels, we bring it back down to the ground, but we still say, let's use technology to take what we're seeing, what we're learning, and amplify that. Because we can, do things in our little echo chambers, in our little small ways all the time. But there's no point in replicating the wheel in Bhutan or Burma. Hills are hills, rivers are rivers, mothers are mothers. So, let's take what we're learning and let's make it easy. Take this bridge solution, take our drawings, take our engineering, and learn from them. Learn about how to also tell your government that, hey, this is what happens when you build a bridge for a community of 2,000 people.
So you see, that's one of the reasons why, when you look at the rural and especially the remote people, they're so far left behind in terms of education. In our work at the Open Institute, we've seen that rural and remote populations are so far left behind that you'll find that some will not even be able to tell you who the president is. Many of them will have to leave school early because it's just logistically a nightmare to do so, even if there was a school not very far away. But because of the fact that as a child I have to first of all go and fetch water, then now go to school, and then come out of school early so that I can fetch firewood, so that then I can do my homework before it gets dark. All of those things. there has to be a way that we can reconcile between the fact that the world is now talking about ChatGPT on the one hand, and these human beings who are absolutely disappearing in the world. And what I don't know is, or what do you think Africa might do so that we begin to leapfrog a little bit? Because you and I have grown up in a world where there's both of these realities, but there's an overwhelming number of people who are being left behind. What are the things that we could do, simple steps that we could take for us to not just be consumers of technology, for us to not just be consumers of innovation, but to begin to innovate? And maybe even to redefine innovation, because the innovation that you would do for a bridge that will affect 2,000 people isn't, Silicon Valley-esque.
Exactly.
But it's innovation and it's useful.
Right.
Should we redefine innovation, and how should we think about it?
That's actually one of what you're speaking about speaks to the heart of why I felt I needed to leave the tech industry. And why I felt I needed to leave the tech industry was it felt like in that world of venture capital, of innovation, of cutting edge, there was a template. There was a script. There was a way your deck had to look, the way you had to present your idea, the way you had to present growth and opportunities and scale. And I just didn't feel that I was reading a different script from everyone else in the room. And so when I think of the innovation of a bridge, we're not saying, great, if we build, no one's thought of this before, if we build a bridge here, it's going to be a game changer. Watch this. It's not that. There is a bridge. The communities are putting a log across the river. We're working with generational knowledge about pathways that these communities desire to follow to get to where they want to go. We are talking about, schools that have been built, hospitals, clinics, midwives that are figuring out how to get to the woman who's going into labor, right? And we're just easing their life. And we're saying, let's take away the guesswork on whether you're going to get there or not today. Because it seems like a human right, safe access to where you're going, safe access to get home, safe access to get to school. So again, going back to the innovation, in Silicon Valley, they call it human-centered design, right? But, go back to building things that people know they need. Have told you that, go back to listening.
So do you think that even as the world is going so far ahead with AI, with robotics, with all of these things, that there is a need for us to also double back and forget the technology for a minute and focus a little bit on the human beings and what needs to be done?
Yeah. I used to feel this when I used to work in education, ed tech. I used to feel this a lot. When COVID happened and technology became the plug, our children have got to keep learning. Right? Technology actually widened the gap, the poverty gap, the education poverty gap we have. Because, think of what kids in Norway started doing. And think of what kids in Garissa were doing. They were worlds apart. And the technology pushed. Okay, how do we get adaptive learning? How do we get kids involved? How do we do assessments? The Norwegians went further and further. And we stayed where we were before the pandemic. And we stopped learning, and the kids stayed out of school. And we said, wait a little longer. What happens to a child? What happens to their literacy abilities when they haven't read a book or let alone seen a screen for 1 year, 9 months, 2 years in some countries? So we do need to go back. And it's a hard question. And, it always comes down to, well, what's the cost of it? How do we bring the cost down? And I think sometimes when it comes to human dignity, maybe we need to spend more money. Maybe we just need to spend more money. Maybe it doesn't need to be sustainable. Maybe we just need to spend money on human dignity.
So we've gone all the way. We've gone around the world. I want to bring it back to you. And I'm going to ask you, so in a nutshell, what do you consider your life's mission to be? How do you define what your raison d'etre is?
I feel I'm so young to be able to answer that question, but you wouldn't think with all my white hair.
I'm sure you have a hypothesis.
The thing I say to my daughter before she goes to school every day is be kind, right? Just be kind. Be a kind person today. I'd love to make the world something that's bearable for her, that doesn't fill her with sorrow.
Yeah.
But what wakes me up in the morning, I love the idea of a team on a mission, mission to make the world a better place. I don't think I could ever sell sugary drinks or video games for kids, violent video games for kids. Make the world a better place, like figure out what teams need to just catalyze them to make that splash a big splash.
Right.
And to think beyond the problem at hand into, the audacious problem that B2P put in front of it is, how do we solve this problem in our lifetimes? And that I love. Like, I love the idea of solving a problem in your lifetime, like taking it, breaking it into chunks, thinking of creative ways, bringing in the best, brightest minds, getting them excited about it. Like, what makes a team stay up till 3 a.m, working on something that's so far removed from the problem, but a crucial part of the solution.
Right.
That's something that really drives me.
So tell me something. The next 10 years, what do they look like to you?
I had hoped that COVID was a little jolt to us. Like, hey, we're worrying about the wrong things in life. Our focus is not on the things that should matter. In this little blip of 70, 80, 90, if you're lucky, years we have on this planet. But I feel like we've gone back. We've gone back to the grind. We've gone back to the rat race. But I'm so hopeful, because I think there's, even the way philanthropy, the way aid, the way donors, the way development is looking, I think we're floating the right things up on the agenda, to the top of the agenda.
Yeah.
We're thinking about, beyond the white saviorism of philanthropy. We're thinking more about, like, how do we make systemic change? How do we make, a continent that's as rich and beautiful and wonderful as Africa to, so the people who live there, own that, and who have the land there are also enjoying and benefiting from it. So I think systems change is a big one. I think technology will play a key role in that. But I think the way we see ourselves needs to also change.
What do you think we should see ourselves as in the coming years?
I think we should see ourselves as a driver and a narrator of how that change should look and what direction we're going, rather than as consumers, recipients, beneficiaries of what the big template tells us.
We have to redefine ourselves, folks, and there you have it. That was Nivi. This is the Open Chats, and we hope that you will subscribe so that you can have a chance to listen to us speak to other people. Go in the comment section and tell us who else you'd like to have us feature, especially on season 1. Season 0, this one, is our test season, and what we are really doing is that we're going to be talking to our board members, our new board members, so that you get a chance to hear from them. And then after that, we'll be calling on many people who are in tech, in development, in data, and we're going to be talking about what the world is going to look like in the future and what your role is likely to be in it. So what you could do is just, follow us, reach out to us. If you feel that there is a way that you can contribute to this, also reach out and let's keep talking. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being with us. Thank you.